Hello there, friends. Today I've come out once again to the beautiful Riverfront Park, and I will be sharing an article with you from HBR's selections on mental toughness. Here is the book. The title of today's article is about rebounding from career setbacks. And this article is written by three authors: Mitchell Lee Marks, Philip Mervis, and Ron Ashkenaz. As always, I will share a little bit about our authors and then jump into the article. Also, one other point, housekeeping. There's a little bit of wind here today, so I apologize if there's any noise on the audio. But in any case, our three authors. Ron Ashkenaz is a senior partner of Schaefer Consulting in Stamford, Connecticut. Mitchell Lee Marks is a leadership professor at San Francisco State University's College of Business and the president of joiningforces.org. And lastly, Philip Mervis is an organizational psychologist and consultant. Wonderful. So let's see what these three gentlemen have to share about rebounding from career setbacks. Brian was a rising star at his company. He advanced through several senior management roles and was soon tapped to head a business unit, reporting directly to the CEO. But after 2 years in the job, despite his stellar financial results, his boss suddenly dismissed him. Brian was told that the company was trying to be a more open, engaged global enterprise, and that his aggressive leadership style did not reflect those values. Like most ambitious managers who suffer career setbacks, Brian went through a period of shock, denial, and self-doubt. After all, he had never previously failed in a position. He had trouble accepting the reality that he wasn't as good as he thought he was. He also felt upset and angry that his boss hadn't given him a chance to prove himself. Eventually, however, he recognized that he couldn't reverse the decision and chose to focus on moving forward. None of the people working for him had objected to his dismissal, so he was particularly keen to figure out how to foster loyalty in future employees. Within a few months, a large industrial parts company, impressed with Brian's undisputed ability to meet financial targets, recruited him to lead a division. The job was a step down from his previous role, but he decided to take it so that he could experiment with different ways of working and leading, learning to better control his emotions and rally his team around him. And it paid off. Less than 3 years later, yet another company, this time a Fortune 500 manufacturer, hired him to be its CEO. During his 7-year tenure in that job, he doubled the firm's revenue and created a culture that balanced innovation with a disciplined focus on productivity and performance. Of course, not everyone can go from being out of a job to running a large company. But in more than 30 years of research and consulting work with executive clients, we found that one lesson from Brian's story applies pretty universally. Even a dramatic career failure can become a springboard to success if you respond in the right way. To execute a turnaround like Brian's, you focus on a few key tasks. Determine why you lost, identify new paths, and seize the right opportunity when it's within your reach. So, the first section, figure out why you lost. We have interviewed hundreds of executives who have been fired, laid off, or passed over for promotion as a result of mergers, restructuring, competition for top jobs, or personal failings. And often, we find them working through the classic stages of loss defined by a psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. They start with shock and denial about the events and move on to anger at the company or the boss, bargaining over their fate, and then a protracted period of licking their wounds and asking themselves whether they can ever regain the respect of their peers and team. Many of them never make it to the acceptance stage. And that's partly because, as social psychologists have found in decades worth of studies, high achievers usually take too much credit for their successes and assign too much external blame for their failures. It's a type of attribution bias that protects self-esteem but also prevents learning and growth. People focus on situational factors or company politics instead of examining their own role in the problem. Some ask others for candid feedback, but most turn to sympathetic friends, family members, and colleagues who reinforce their self-image. You deserve that job, etc., etc. That doesn't help them at all. And in fact, it feeds their sense of injustice. This prevents them from considering their own culpability and breaking free of the destructive behavior that derailed them in the first place. And it may also lead them to ratchet back their current efforts and future expectations in the workplace. Those who do rebound from career losses take a decidedly different approach. Instead of getting stuck in grief or blame, they actively explore how they contributed to what went wrong, evaluate whether they sized up the situation correctly and reacted appropriately, and consider what they would do differently if given a chance. They also gather feedback from a wide variety of people, including superiors, peers, and subordinates, making it clear that they want honest feedback, not consolation. Brian, for example, had to engage in frank, somewhat painful conversations with his boss, several direct reports, and a few trusted colleagues to discover that he had developed a career-limiting reputation for being difficult and not always in control of his emotions. It's probably not something you want to hear, especially if you are someone who does tend to lose control of their emotions in some of these situations. You don't want to hear about it, but fortunately in this case, Brian was able to have those conversations and hear the feedback from others. Also, consider Stan, a senior partner at a boutique professional services firm considering global expansion. A vocal proponent of the growth plan, he had hoped to lead the company's new London office. When another partner was selected instead, Stan was outraged. He stewed for a few weeks, but then resolved to take a more productive tack. He set up one-on-one meetings with members of the firm's executive committee. At the start of each session, he explained that he wasn't trying to reverse the decision. He just wanted to understand why it had been made. He took care not to sound bitter or to badmouth the process or the people involved. He maintained a positive, confident tone, and he expressed a willingness to learn from his missteps. Now, this may be an excellent approach to take. Depends on the firm, the partners you are speaking with, the executives, and your relationship with them. There are some corporations, some companies who will, under no circumstances, provide any sort of feedback like this. There is liability associated with it in some companies' eyes. So, keeping that in mind, I'll continue this article. As a result, the executive committee members gave him consistent, useful comments. They regarded his aggressiveness as an asset in the United States, but worried that he would get in the way of securing new clients and running an office in the UK. His initial reaction was defensive. No one minded my aggressiveness when it landed key contracts, he thought. But he kept those feelings in check and then quickly came round to appreciating the candor. It wasn't they were asking me to change, Stan reflected. They made clear to me that my style got in the way of this opportunity. The next section, identifying new paths. The next step is to identify a new path and to objectively weigh the potential for turning your loss into a win. Whether that's in a different role in your organization, to move to a new company, to shift to a different industry or career. Reframing losses as opportunities involves hard thinking about who you are and what you want. Research shows that escapism is a common reaction to career derailment. People may take trips to get away from their troubles, immerse themselves in busy work, drink or eat excessively, or avoid discussing their thoughts and plans with family and friends. Now, while these behaviors can give you mental space to sort things out, they rarely lead to a productive transition. It's more effective to engage in focused exploration of all the options available. New opportunities don't usually present themselves right away, of course, and it can be hard to spot them through the fog of anger and disappointment in the early days after a setback. Studies by change management expert William Bridges highlight the tension people feel when they're torn between hanging on to their current identities and expectations and letting go. Leaders we've counseled describe entering a twilight zone. The status quo has been fatally disrupted, but it's not clear yet what success will look like in the future. That's why it's useful to take time to test out some ideas for what to do next. One option is to speak with a career counselor or engage in therapy, both to clarify goals and to work on personal development. Another is to take a temporary leave from your job to go back to school or test drive a career interest at a startup or non-profit. Pausing a bit can allow you to find new meaning in your setback. Recall how Brian reacted when he was fired from his unit head job. He began to consider lower level positions that would give him room to tinker with his leadership style. Or look at Paula, whom we met while studying the resiliency of online advertising executives involved in restructurings. When her high-tech company's new CEO launched a corporate makeover, Paula felt relatively safe because the European business unit that she led had met or exceeded its target for 11 straight quarters. And she had been promoted 3 times in 5 years. But then she discovered that her position would be eliminated. At first, Paula blamed everything from company politics to her boss's failure to protect her and her team. Then, 3 months after the announcement, her last day arrived. She had no plans and didn't want to make any right away. Instead, she spent time examining her life and her career. She reached out to friends and business associates, not to network, but to gain perspective and advice in thinking through her goals. She reflected on each conversation, made notes, and eventually developed what she dubbed 4 themes for my next job. She wanted to bring new products to market, to interact more directly with clients, to work for a company with a unique value proposition, and to have colleagues she liked and trusted. Paula then tailored her job search to achieve these goals. And you may also have productively revised your definition of success. Spend some time reflecting over it and determine what your goals should be. Research we've conducted, along with career specialist Douglas Hall, shows that needs and priorities can change dramatically over time. As children are born and grow up and move out after a divorce or a parent's death, when early dreams fade in midlife and new ones emerge, when perspectives and skills become outdated and new growth challenges beckon. So choosing the right opportunity has a lot to do with the moment when you happen to be looking. Paula's story is a case in point. Her list of must-haves led her to interview for and accept a more senior position as a VP of International Sales at a smaller firm in the same industry. The job was located in the European city where she already lived and wanted to stay. Brian, by contrast, took a significant step down, but he took advantage of the opportunity to learn and become a better manager. He developed an understanding of the triggers that had caused him to behave unproductively in the past and devised coping strategies. For example, instead of immediately pouncing on subordinates for performance misses, he learned to have offline discussions with the relevant managers. And after some practice, the measured approach began to feel more natural to him. Bruce, a senior IT manager at a New York bank that went through a merger, is another example. He kept his job in the deal's aftermath, but was devastated to lose out in his bid to become the chief technology officer of the merged company. He stayed on through the integration, but after a year of rethinking his personal and career goals and considering a variety of jobs, he moved with his family to Austin, Texas, and joined a small technology firm that became wildly successful. Just as important, he also found time to coach his 2 children's soccer teams and to pursue his passion for music as a guitarist for a local band. Like Paula and Brian, Bruce did serious discovery work after his setback and then acted with conviction. He moved to a new city, industry, and job that would allow him to recover and thrive. For executives who decide to stay with their employees, the biggest change may be mindset or psychological commitment. That's what happened with Stan at the professional services firm. Having gained a clearer sense of how his colleagues viewed him, he embraced his role as rainmaker, better appreciating the income, status, and perks that came with it. He also found a new source of satisfaction and accomplishment, mentoring the next generation of talent on how to win businesses. Shifting perspective like this takes just as much energy as switching companies or jobs. If you are not able to dig into your current work with renewed gusto, as Stan did, you might decide to put more discretionary effort into family life, volunteering, or hobbies, recognizing that having a rich personal life can compensate for not being number one on your team or in your organization. So I hope you enjoyed that article, gave you some perspective on personal goals and career goals and how to address some of these difficult situations when you are faced with a failure or setback. Thank you.